The Alinity platform will modernize most aspects of college administration, from registration applications to finances. While the college has existing member and professional misconduct databases, they will now be housed in a more interactive and integrated manner. The overall objective is to allow members increased ability to actively manage their CAP profile. For example, as Dr. Troy Janzen will soon discuss, to make simple changes to their supervision plans, such as practice location and population served. In addition, the Alinity program provides for increased internal reporting. The MMS platform also provides a digital avenue for the much anticipated continuing competence program, commonly referred to as CCP. As Dr. Dina Martin will elaborate in the latter half of our town hall today, our long-awaited CCP is set to be launched on February 1st, 2022, in conjunction with the annual practice permit cycle. Launching of the CCP is also an effort to bring CAP into the modern era, as most self-regulated and many non-regulated professions have continuing competence requirements. It is typically viewed as a quality assurance mechanism, ensuring self-regulated professionals maintain their competency by keeping pace with the evolving nature of the science and research underlying their clinical practice. In my opinion, it also suggests a profession's level of maturity. An additional feature of the MMS is financial management. The MMS will allow applicants and members to pay application, examination, and registration renewal fees. It will also allow applicants and members to obtain receipts directly. Internally, the MMS will be linked to our accounting system and simplify financial entries. This will be particularly helpful for timely financial reporting and forecasting. Overall, CAP is excited about the opportunity to continue to modernize our practices, increasing member participation and interaction with their professional profile, and gain many administrative efficiencies. Now I would like to turn to the first half of today's town hall meeting that is directed towards supervision plans. Traditionally, supervision plans were held outside of our main ancestral database. Supervision plans were downloaded by members and submitted to CAP. Upon approval, they were scanned into a PDF and attached to the regulated member's file. Importantly, and often, they required revisions to address missing or incorrect information. These processes were both time-consuming and labor-intensive. They often required extensive correspondence back and forth with applicants. This led to processing delays. This is particularly true for many people who have multiple supervision plans or are requesting revisions to their supervision plans. The new MMS system will allow for applicants to interact with their plans electronically and for CAP to approve, conditionally approve, or seek modifications in a much more seamless manner. It will also allow for regulated members to make minor modifications in real time without seeking CAP approval. To discuss these changes in detail, I would like to turn this part of today's town hall meeting over to Dr. Janzen. He is currently serving as CAP's Deputy Registrar and Complaints Director. Dr. Janzen has worked in the areas of assessment and intervention with children and families in hospital, school, and private practice settings for over 2 decades. He has also extensive experience working in and for Indigenous communities, providing both clinical and program expertise. From 2009 to 2017, Dr. Janzen served as the University of Alberta Department of Educational Psychology, clinical supervisor and practicum coordinator for their CPA accredited school and clinical child psychology program. He continues to serve as an adjunct assistant professor in the same program. Prior to the U of A, Dr. Janzen was the chair of the psychology department at Taylor University, where he helped establish an undergraduate program. Over to you, Dr. Janzen.
Thanks so much, Richard, and welcome again, everybody. I'm glad you could join us this fine morning. And I want to just fill you in on a couple of important highlights regarding our supervision plans. And I've had the honor to be able to kind of be participant in working towards how the new plans look in the MMS system. And so we want to highlight a number of things to anyone who is either a provisional psychologist and or to those who supervise them, as these are important changes that you should pay attention to. The very first thing I wanted to note is that we're really excited about the MMS system. The MMS system has some amazing functionality that we think you will find much easier to use and is a significant improvement over how we can interact with members through the technology that's available. It has more capabilities than ever before, and we feel we're moving into a realm of excellence by adopting a system that can have this kind of functionality. Having worked now firsthand with the technology itself in working towards the current eventual launch of our member management system, I can tell you that it's so much easier to enter things, and there are things created to ensure that things aren't missed and that we can make sure things are completed easily. So that's the first point, is that for those who are new applicants to CAP, entering a supervision plan is very easy. I've done sample plan entries a number of times, and we actually have created what we believe is a helpful video that we'll be posting on our website shortly, if it isn't there already, that instructs people on how you enter a new supervision plan. The second major change or shift that I want to tell you about is for supervisors. As many of you know, you might have more than one supervisor at any given time for a supervision plan. And you may have multiple people playing a more primary role as a supervisor. The system continues to allow that sort of flexibility. But in our case, we wanted to note that for the purpose of the new system, primary supervisor always denotes the person who has a role to play in evaluating the provisional psychologist at some point during their supervision. So primary means evaluates. That's an important distinction that we want to make sure you are aware of. You can also have multiple secondary supervisors, and usually they're playing a support role, but are not evaluating directly, at least. We do expect that primary and secondary and all supervisors would collaborate and communicate with one another regarding giving you evaluative feedback at any given time, as that is considered to be at least best practice in the area of supervision. When you enter a supervision plan, and a little bit later, I'll be demonstrating this with an actual plan, a fictitious plan, I should say, within our test site. So I can demonstrate this firsthand. You'll see that you get to list your supervisors in a numbered list at the beginning of your plan. I wanted to just comment about one aspect of this, is that we've put a comment for provisional psychologists that the number one person you list as supervisor in your plan in the new system is what we would believe is meant to be the one with overarching responsibility for your plan, overall responsibility, in the sense that you're listing them first for a reason. Now, we know that in the old system, that concept was not really part of how you entered plans or even listed supervisors. But we wanted to communicate to you that that's how we want to see that listing of supervisors going forward, so that whoever's listed in the number one position of your supervisor is the person that we might say communicate with if we had a question around your supervision and for any reason going forward. And the number one supervisor really is then meant to also play a more of a coordinating role in facilitating collaborative communication amongst other supervisors and with yourself as the provisional psychologist. So I hope that's fairly clear. And we feel that would be helpful to kind of think about it that way. And that will, I think, facilitate a number of things going forward. One big change to the way we enter plans in the new system is that in the old system, I used to have to submit a separate paper plan for every branch of psychology that you wish to gain competence in. Branches are things like clinical counseling, educational school, health and rehabilitation, forensics, neuropsychology, or industrial organizational psychology are the different branches. We have had to organize those plans differently in the new system. Currently, we are now going to be organizing your plan entirely by practice activity. Practice activity is things like interventions, formal or general assessment, supervision, consultation, and or research and teaching. So now the organization of the plan had to be done by practice activity And we feel that this is a more simplified way. We have not eliminated branches from the way supervision plans are there. That information is still there and able to be indicated, but how you will reflect that going forward in the plan will be done differently. It's not separate plans for branch anymore. It's now one plan that has various different activities, whatever activities you're trying to achieve competence in. What we'll be recommending for those that are new is that they need to reflect the detail of how they're achieving competence in each particular branch. If they're identifying more than one professional branch, is that they'll have to add more information within the text boxes to be able to sort of reflect how they're achieving that competence in each particular branch, rather than submitting as a separate plan. I hope that's fairly clear. And since plans are now organized by activity, another major change is that instead of an evaluation for a whole practice plan, or a supervision plan rather, you will now be evaluated for each individual professional activity and not for the overall plan. So if you've, say, identified interventions, formal and general assessment, and consultation, and that's the 4 main activities in your plan, we will have a separate evaluation for interventions, for formal assessment, for general assessment, and for consultation. And in each activity, you must identify a primary supervisor who will be responsible for that evaluation. The other important thing I'll note is that you have to identify an anticipated end date within your supervision plan. I'll show this in the demo shortly. The anticipated end date in the system will now automatically notify your primary supervisor listed that they must complete an evaluation within 30 days. This will be automated and you won't have to think about it anymore. On the other hand, you must pay attention to the anticipated end date, because the end date, if you are coming up close to an end date and you realize I'm not going to achieve all of my hours yet, you have the ability, without requiring our approval, to go in and amend the date so that it reflects reality of when you're actually going to be done. You want that date to correspond to when you want to be evaluated and have hours counted, in other words. The end date can be changed to also end a plan early if you need to end it sooner to reflect other major changes. And we'll show you how you can easily and quickly do that in some training videos that have been put together to facilitate how to do that. So for those of you who are actively now participating in this town hall and you're working on a supervision plan that's currently underway and you're being supervised, and that supervision plan was already approved by CAP and it was approved by paper, that plan is still in effect and alive. And what we've done is we've hired an entire team of temporary staff people and trained them who've been working diligently over the last month and a half and working hard to enter your plans. How we've done this is that your original paper plans were made into PDFs and are uploaded now to your My Documents in your profile. If it should have become live to you, I believe, as of yesterday, that you should have been able to access and see how we've actually imported your plan. What we've done is that if you have an active plan that's currently alive right now, in the sense that you're currently working towards completion of hours, we had to find a way to enter it into the member management system for you. And we did this to save approximately 800 provisional psychologists plus from having to do it individually all over again yourselves. So we hope you appreciate that we've tried to save you a lot of time. We know your time is incredibly valuable. You're all busy professionals. And so we've worked hard to enter those plans based on the approved paper plans as best we could. Now, will it be 100% accurate or reflecting of reality, those plans in the MMS system? It's possible that we may have made decisions based on our best guesses of who should evaluate you in a particular activity. And we did this based on a rule-based system, but it may not accurately reflect who you thought would be doing the evaluation or who your supervisor thought would evaluate you on that particular activity. What our message to you is this, is to look at that plan, go in, see how we've done that, and discuss it with your supervisor. Probably the easiest thing for you might be to see if your supervisor will agree, even if it's not 100% reflecting on reality. At least the supervisors that's listed are approved supervisors on your plan already. So one of the easiest things might be to just simply ask your supervisors if they're willing to let it stand as it is now and make sure they understand that they're going to have to evaluate you if they're listed as primary on a particular activity. And by all means, they can consult with the other supervisor or supervisors to coordinate the evaluation. And the evaluation is done online. It's quick and easy. It's almost exactly the same as the old form was, but it's online and it's done quickly and submitted in a single step electronically. It can be done on your cell phone, actually. So it's really, really slick, and I think you'll find it very easy to use. If you do really feel you need to make a change to the primary, please note that it does require a process of submitting it to us to approve. Now, we understand that it may have been our error in making a change to the primary and didn't reflect reality. But our effort to save you time means that you might have to make that change. You can certainly do so. We're going to try to fast track approvals for those kinds of changes from now till the end of, say, December is what we'd recommend everyone look in and make sure they get and submit those changes if they need them in the short term, if at all possible. Therefore, the reason for that is that we want to make sure that if you're making those kinds of changes, that we can kind of get them done before we're into our next renewal cycle and registration cycle, as we'll be adding new pieces, and Dr. Dina Martin will be talking about one of those significant pieces, which is our continuing competence program shortly. All right, so what else do I want to cover? The good news about making changes to plans is it's rather simple in most cases. And in many cases, we've made it possible for you to make a change to your plan and save it without requiring an approval step by CAP. It allows you to make those changes rather simply and easily. And we've made one video that shows you how to make changes that don't require our approval, and a second video on how to make changes that do require a CAP approval step. And we want to tell you what those situations are. You can make the following changes without our approval. You can add a new location. That as long as you're doing the same activities and you're not adding a branch or adding an activity through the adding of that location, you can add that location without our approval. This, of course, for provisionals, you know that a location must not be a solo practice in a private practice setting, but as long as it meets the minimum criteria within the supervision plan, standards, you can add a location without our approval, without requiring a CAP approval step. You can change your population of focus, whether you're working with children or adults or anything in between, whether you're working with individuals, couples, or families. Those sorts of population demographics can be changed on the plan without requiring our approval. Now, while I say that, we also want to make sure you only do that in consultation with your supervisor, as they must have competence in that with that population of focus, and you must have had adequate preparation as well and sufficient professional knowledge prior to entering into any work with any particular population. But you can make that change in the plan without our approval. Our assumption is that you have talked and confirmed with your supervisor that they're comfortable with working with you in that area, and that we're not going to check it in this situation. You can update information in the text boxes. You'll notice, for those of you who we entered your plan to save ourselves some time, we said, see your original plan in my documents in the text boxes rather than re-entering all the texts a second time. We felt that was a waste of everyone's time to do that, since the original plan is preserved. But you have the ability to add extra detail in the text box of things you're wanting to keep track of and have a record of, and make those changes without requiring our approval. You can change your anticipated end date, as I mentioned. Please note, you have to pay attention to end dates. You have to make sure that you're responsible for making that change, and you can do that without our approval. It's just that date triggers the evaluation step. And so you must always be conscious and mindful of that date, and maybe give yourselves reminders in other things like your calendar, so that you know when it's coming up and that you can make a change well prior to that end date. Okay. Changes that do require approval are similar to how the old days, in that if you are going to add a practice activity that's new for you, as per the standards of practice, if it's brand new and it wasn't originally approved and you want to add, let's say you didn't put formal assessment in your original supervision plan, but now you want to add it somehow, it does require our approval and you'll have to submit sufficient detail. And you can do that easily in the system. It will require an approval step. Similar to adding another branch, you will require approval. If you want to close out a portion of a supervision plan, let's say you're having a job change, your supervisor's retiring, any number of circumstances could cause a supervision plan to close out even prematurely, and you need to end it. You can do that in the system. And so, that kind of change would require some significant steps. You'd have to change the end date to make sure it's the portion completed is evaluated, change the counted out the hours to reflect the change in hours, because you might have planned on 1,600 hours. And then your supervisor said, I got a new gig in BC and I'm leaving and we have to quit early. I'm giving you 30 days notice. And now you're going to have to find a new supervisor and create a whole new plan possibly. You can do that in the system rather easily, but those kind of things will require submission to CAP so we can get it evaluated and approved. And we'll show you how to do that in some of the training. You can also, if you've changed a primary for any activity or anywhere in your plan, a primary supervisor change requires CAP approval. So those are the main things that I wanted to highlight for you. Now, I'm going to share my screen now, if I can, and and I'm going to walk you through a fictitious plan that's been created. And this fictitious plan, you should all now see what looks like an Alinity login page. This is actually our test site, not our live site. And we've created a fictitious provisional psychologist by the name of Mary Ainsworth. And I want to just show you how quickly and easily you can, and to show you firsthand some of the different elements of a supervision plan, just so you have more familiarity with that. And I'll then pause for a bit to see if there were any burning questions coming up. And we do have a Q&A in the below your screen. You should see a Q&A. If you have questions, please fire them in and we'll make sure we leave time for all of those. Okay, so for this one, you have to log in. And by the way, all the instructions for logging in are right here below. So you don't have to call in to ask, how do I log in? It's right here, and you can actually get here from our main web page. So it's really simple to get here. So I'm just going to log in as Mary Ainsworth and show you what a dashboard would look like within the new member management system if you haven't gone there. And hopefully this will work. And so we won't have issues with getting into the system. If we do, we might have to direct you to go to our videos that are online. There we go. It worked. Okay. So here's the dashboard that most everyone will see. You might have different things appear for you depending on what stage in the process. So this is a person we're pretending is a provisional psychologist rather. And in the section that says my forms, and here where I'm highlighting with my mouse, hours of supervised evaluated practice, this is your supervision plan. You'll notice that because it's already, we're pretending that she's already had a paper plan approved. And so if we wanted to make changes to her plan or see it, we just have to click the update button. That'll take us to her actual supervision plan. And in the plan, there's lots of instructions. There's links to information within our website. And there's places where you can upload information quickly and easily as PDFs and drag and drop them in. Very easy to use. This first section is if you have if you're in a pre-doctoral internship, And in that situation, there's a number of pieces of evidence that we require for provisional psychologists in that case. We're pretending she's a master's level psychologist so that we didn't have anything here for demo purposes. The request for credit is a section that's reserved for people that have completed hours, say in another jurisdiction, and are coming to Alberta, having already completed some supervised hours. This could have been through the internship, a doctoral internship, but it could also have just been that they completed some supervised hours within another Canadian jurisdiction and under the free trade agreement are coming to us. And they want to count those hours ahead of time. And they might have all of them or only some of them in different cases. So this is the section. And when you add to this section, you're basically getting everything you're going to see next, which is it's identical to all the rest of the way we've structured the supervision plans. But you can safely ignore this section if you're not one of those coming in on CFTA, and you can see who this applies to up here. If it doesn't apply to you, you don't have to worry about it. But it's for reapplicants, it's for doctoral interns, and it's for CFTA or Canadian Free Trade Agreement people entering in that have prior supervised experience they wish to count. I want to note one thing, however, for those of you who were in that have a supervision plan that we were entering for you, and some of your hours were already banked, so to speak, like they were evaluated. We had no way to enter that without requesting you to re-enter your evaluation and do it over again. So for what we did for all of you in the transitionary year, we've entered your counted hours in this request for credit section so that they're counted. But you actually don't apply to those situations necessarily. You're just filled in, you completed a portion of hours, and we needed a way to enter them for you. So some of you will see that we've counted some of your evaluated hours in this section if you're an existing provisional psychologist. And so we wanted to note that to you because it's important to know why we did that. Go on a go forward basis that won't apply. You'll be in that special privileged area where we had to do something unique for you just to make sure that the hours are still counted, because it's important that you get to that 1,600 minimum at some point in time in your plan. So the next part is the actual plan itself. And you'll see that you complete the plans, and this is an already completed plan. So we've pretended, like you can identify practice locations, and if you needed to add them, you could easily do it. So we're pretending that Mary Ainsworth is working in a really great school division. Well, let's say Mary wants to now branch into private practice with the same supervisors, but she wants to do like an evening and a Saturday at another one. All she'd have to do is tell us the things she's doing there and the branch, right? And as long as the branch didn't change, we won't need approval from CAP for this. If she wants to add a branch, additional steps and approval will be required. So let's say we want to do a really great private practice. Well, lo and behold, if you start typing a name of a location, if it's in our database, it will pre-populate right below. You simply select it and the address populates for you. Pretty slick. If you find that you've got a location that has never existed in our database, you will have to manually enter it below, but it's fairly simple to do that. You make a mistake, you can simply trash it and get rid of it if you didn't want to keep it, right? So let's say I changed my mind, not doing it. It's gone, simple. Adding, you can see these are the different, the next section after locations is supervisors. So you'll see they're listed by name. And so look, we have our primary supervisor, Dr. Dina Martin, our secondary, Dr. Troy Janzen. And lo and behold, look at, they're both labeled primary. That's possible because it may be that Troy is supervising and evaluating a different activity from Dina, and therefore you have multiple primaries. If you needed to add another secondary, let's say you wanted to have the support of another supervisor, you could add that easily. For example, let's say I wanted to add Dr. Spellacy as a secondary supervisor. All I'd have to do is start entering their last name or their practice number, whichever you know, select it, identify them as secondary, and that change can be done without requiring our approval as well. You still will have to make all the declarations, tell us how you're going to supervise you, etc. And if you don't change your mind, you can just get rid of them as easily as that. Adding and changing activities and branches is more complicated, but there are still some things that I wanted to be able to show you that are easy to change and are allowed to be changed without our approval here. For example, if Mary wanted to work with couples now, talk to her supervisor and said, yeah, sure, you can consult to couples as well. You could click that without requiring our approval. It's open to you. You can add extra details about couples in the line below. And you give us sufficient detail. I'm just showing you that it's easy to enter. And tell us the purpose, tell us the method, etc. If you're going to do anything that requires a more significant change to a particular activity in your plan, the way to do that is to identify, yes, I need to make changes. That will allow certain things to become available to you to change. Not everything will be available to you for you to change, even if you click yes. Let me show you that step. So if I want to change consultation somehow, let's say I've listed Dina as my primary, but Dina has, an offer to go teach at the University of Hawaii for the next 3 years. So she says, I'm sorry, I'm going to take that. I'm going. And then you say, okay, Troy, can you do it? And he says, I don't have time to give that. And so then you find a third and you need to replace your primary. How do you do that? Well, you have to click yes first. And you'll notice that this is still grayed out. Anything grayed out means you can't change it without approval. What you're going to have to do is change the hours to reflect how many hours Dina did supervise you for, how many supervision hours, so that it reflects reality. Then you're going to change the anticipated end date to today. If you wanted to get it evaluated, or in 30 days, let's say she gave you 30 days notice, you can set it for the day she's done. You'd have to change it here. And then as soon as you do make that change and submit it to us, it's going to cause the evaluation step to happen on that date. So be sure about that. So if we set it for, say, the 30th, that Dina's going to fly to Hawaii and we want Richard to take over somehow as primary, well, we first have to end it, reflect the change in hours appropriately. So if it was maybe 100 instead of 150 done at this point, you got 50 hours you're going to need to round out. How do you do that? You just change that to 100, change that as appropriate. It has to stay at the same ratios as always. 1 hour of supervision for 15 for those on Form A. And now you'll have to add back in a new piece. You'd add, pop down. And now you'll add the consultation piece simply and easily down here. You'll probably have to add the additional new primary supervisor in the supervision list above. I know I just deleted it, but if you had him entered there, you could add that back in. And so you'd have to include the hours of practice supervision, who they're working with. You'll have to give us the text information, but you should be able to cut and paste that from anywhere above. It's fairly, Control C, Control V are your shortcuts. It's will help you very greatly if very little's changed in terms of what you're doing, if you're adding that kind of piece. And then when you're entering your supervisor, you'll notice something unusual here is that instead of names here, we've put them by numbers. And this was just a simplified way. And what is the numbering? Well, if you go back up here to the supervisor list, you'll see that each supervisor is in a numbered list. Dina, number 1, Troy, number 2, and then if I add a third, it would be number 3. So you can identify your primary, secondary supervisor by number. So in the original plan, it was Dina, primary, Troy, secondary. In our example here, if it was, let's just say it was Troy taking over as primary, you'd put number 2 because he's the number 2 in your list. Hopefully that makes sense to everyone. We try to keep it straightforward. It's linked so that the number automatically pulls their name, and that's who gets sent the evaluation then. And so it's got to be linked somehow to our database, and this was the way the computer system needed to do it for us to be able to automate a lot of the process so that it's much more quick and easy for you. So that's my little demo to show you a number of different aspects. And one of the neat features on the supervision plan, you can see that it automatically calculates hours for you and shows you your total plan hours. These are the actual practice hours you will be achieving. and the portion that's the supervision hours, it does that, calculates, so you can see if you've met the minimums, right? You need to have minimum 1,600 in your plan. And if you ever just need to finish later, like you say, oh, I don't have time, I can't finish it now, you can click the Save for Later button and come back to it. Submit button is reserved only for things that you've changed that require our approval. Please don't click that button if you don't intend for us to review what you've changed. You only need to save it for later for those simple changes. Bigger changes need to be submitted. If you exit out of your plan before you've saved it, you will lose your changes. So make sure you save it for later. Do not click the withdraw button because I think that means you're withdrawing your plan entirely and you might need to start over again. So there can be situations where that is allowable and you may need to start from scratch for some reason. Let's say you got on a 1,600-hour plan approved, you thought everything was a go, and then 2 weeks before you're about to start, they say, oh, sorry, we can't take you anymore. Now you have to start all over. That the withdrawal allows you to kind of withdraw that plan and then resubmit a new plan fairly easily. So I hope that was helpful for everyone. I'm going to stop my screen share now. And I'll turn it back over to Dr. Spellacy, and we'll see if there's been any questions that I need to answer.
Yes, Troy, thank you very much. I just wanted to put to you some questions. I know we're coming to the close of the hour and we'll be starting the continuing competence section, but I have a number of questions that we would like to address, and I'll put them to you, Dr. Janzen. So first off, a person expressed their gratitude as a current provisional for saving the work of having to input the plan. When they open up their portal, they only have a PDF document uploaded in My Documents. There are no other sections. The form section that was shown when I'm on the home page at this time, is there an estimated time for when this should be up?
Yes, the answer is yes. And you may be in one of those situations. For example, anyone who's currently on Form B, we are currently in finalizing the development of how we're going to move you to Form B. And we want to do that in a single easy step for all of you. So if Naomi, if you're in the Form B scenario, it's coming, and we anticipate by the end of this week, we're hoping that that Form B is available and we can in one fell swoop send all the supervisees, all the provisionals that are on Form B, a form that you just have to simply update us on who your supervisor is for the Form B. This is for those of you who've got 1,600 hours done. It's been evaluated already. So you might have seen in the that there should be some reflection of that, but we wanted, if it was simply just reflect that you're on Form B, we want to make that simple so that you can just continue to have access to things like the EPPP, to the LEAP, which you also must complete prior to being fully registered. So if you're not in that Form B, there's just a few left that we currently still have a temp actively working on some plans and entering them. And these are the ones we left for last. And so if you're in that boat, it's because there's probably been many changes over the course of the last year or several years to your plan. And those are much more complex for us to figure out. So we still have a small number of those still left to go, but I think most of them are done now, if not all. I'd have to check because I haven't checked the status in the last few days on where we are at with importing plans. But all of them should be mostly there already. And the rest are Form Bs that we're going to then submit a form to you because we know you're on Form B because we know you're done. And you've had your 1,600 hours evaluated and they're done, and you've done the LEAP. So then you can just reflect to us who's supervising you going forward. There's an important change coming to Form B. I don't know, Richard, do you want to highlight that important change?
Go ahead, Troy. And just can you also highlight, because we have a similar question to the first question. Someone was echoing that person's comments. Do we know when we anticipate of having the Form B solution up and running?
Yeah, we do. It's going to be we wanted to keep life simple for everyone. So we're trying to create a very simplified form, because the only thing that really changes in Form B for most of you is that your supervisor has indicated to us you've done 1,600 hours and you're more or less ready for a greater level of independence in your practice. When we get that evaluation, your ratio of supervision, it becomes lighter. The current standard has been shifted by a council vote, I believe has happened already, Richard, if I'm not mistaken, that it's now a minimum of 2 hours per month instead of 1. And so just make note of that, because if you haven't noted that change, it is a new change to the supervision standards. But because it's just a simplified and a lighter, you still must be supervised at all times as a provisional until you finish all pieces of your plan. We still need something to reflect that you're still under that condition to be supervised, but that it's acceptable to have less hours of supervision per practice hours. And yes, you have to do 2 hours per month, even if you have very limited practice. We expect you to still touch base with your supervisors on an ongoing basis. There's other things to keep track of, your progress with how you're preparing for your professional exam, or, just making sure you're well and that your, work-life balance, all those good things that supervisors tend to check in on is still our expectation while on Form B. I don't know if you'd add anything to that, Richard.
No, that's fine. I want to get to a few more questions. So this one's from a fully registered psychologist, and they want to add a branch. Do I have access to the part of the portal to update and record my supervision to eventually declare competency?
The answer is, if you're a fully registered psychologist already, no, you don't have access to add and input information in a supervision plan like a provisional would. We're still asking you to submit adding an entirely new branch or a practice activity. And many people ask us the question, what does the standard refer to in terms of if I need to add a practice area? We're clarifying that in the future revision of the standards so that it's clear that we're talking about adding or changing a practice activity. So for example, you never identified formal assessment, for example, in your original plan, and now you wish to add it. You can submit a paper version of plan like old times for those that need that. And the same would go for adding an entirely new branch, I believe, Richard, and correct me if I'm wrong.
No, that's correct, Troy. And another question was, for provisionals on Form B, do we have to do any changes? And I think what I've heard you say today, and from my understanding, you do not have to do any changes on Form B. Simply wait for the announcements of how your Form B, when it's available. And it is going to be in the PDF form, of course, because we are not entering that supervision plan into the old form. I have another question, and this is probably one that will frequently happen. What is the consequence process if an end date is triggered by the provisional requires more time?
Yeah, that's a common scenario. And so what'll happen is when the supervisor evaluates you at that date, let's say you planned on 1,600 hours, the date, and you forgot to change the date. And now you're getting evaluated, but you only got 1,000 hours in because it's just life got in the way. You got too busy. You just couldn't, you could only manage a 0.6 after all, and you thought you could do full time. That happens a lot. And so we don't worry. We're not worried about it. It can still get reflected. The supervisor in their evaluation will be given an opportunity to report the actual hours. And remember, you must keep a record of your supervision. You must keep track with your supervisor in the form of a record or log. And later we'll be telling you about how you could potentially take advantage of the system itself to add an option. There's an optional method on the system itself to track hours on a monthly basis. We don't currently have a training video on how you can take advantage of that. You can do it any way you wish, as long as you're keeping track and that you're following our supervision standards in respect to tracking your hours, and so that when you submit it, it's an accurate reflection. Please note the system doesn't allow fractions like 0.5 of an hour, and it's whole numbers only. So we always had to round and we always gave you the benefit of the doubt to round up hours because the system wants to work with whole numbers. It's easier for us. And so track the hours as best you can. And if it's a fraction, round up is fine, or round as you see fit, but you'll need to report whole hours. So hopefully that answers that question.
Okay, the next question is, will primary supervisors have access through their dashboard to the online evaluations of their supervisees? Or are the evaluations only on the supervisees' dashboards?
The evaluation populates to the supervisor. That you must make a declaration that you're sharing that with the your evaluative comments and and we expect that supervisors are sharing their evaluative and comments and feedback and what they plan to submit to us prior to submitting it. Once it's submitted, I think at that point it becomes accessible to the provisional, and they can see in their profile that an evaluation has been received. So I think that answers the question that we send the supervisor directly. And that's why it was so important that we have all the accurate information of who's supervising in the list and who's listed primary correctly, so that that's the person getting it. And in fact, what it'll do in your evaluation, you'll see all other supervisors listed in that activity, and then you just have to fill it out. And then when you're ready and you're satisfied, you've filled everything, you click submit. If you ever miss a field that's required by us, it won't let you submit it. It'll force you to fill out the required fields. And so that way we don't get incomplete evaluations, which has been a common problem, and that our staff has spent countless hours having to chase supervisors, say, oh, did you mean to fill this out this way? Did you forgot to fill this in, or you forgot to fill that in? That won't happen anymore. You'll have to fill in the required fields. But it's simple, it's easy. And then once you submit it, it can become accessible, but we assume, because they declared so, that you've shared the evaluative comments with that supervisee before you submit it. And that's an important principle in supervision, is giving the feedback directly to your provisional.
Okay, the next question I have is, in your presentation, Dr. Janzen, you said the 4 areas you modeled have to have a primary supervisor for each. Would this not be the same person triaging, integrating, and the secondary parties involved in training, teaching, small S supervising of the intern?
Yeah, you can have multiple people supervising you for any particular activity. And for example, you could be working in a private practice and at an AHS site doing interventions in both locations with different people overseeing your work. We fully have given that capability, and that's where you have primaries and secondaries, but there can be only one primary for an activity to evaluate you. And that's just a limitation of the system, that we don't want to have hundreds or multiple evaluation forms popping in. So our expectation is primary and all other supervisors talk to each other, that the assessment and evaluation that's submitted reflects all of their comments that has already been shared with the provisional. So yeah, absolutely, that you only have one primary evaluating any particular activity responsible for the submission, but it's really evaluated by all of the people listed as supervisors. We just expect a collaborative single report, and the person responsible is the person that's listed as primary. I hope that makes sense. Our expectation is collaboration and communication amongst all other supervisors is normative, that we expect that's what you're doing. We hope that you are, because we think that's probably good practice to do so. To talk, just like if you have multiple therapists working with the same client, it'd be better to talk with one another about that, to make sure you're working in concert and have a similar perspective on the professional development of your supervisee or on the progress of a client. So in that respect, we do have that. We built the system with that expectation. So we hope that works for all of you.
Thank you, Dr. Janzen. I have another question from a supervisor. When the applicant submits their plan, does the named supervisor get a notification? And do the supervisors have to agree they will supervise?
Absolutely. You should not be submitting a name of a person who's never agreed to. In fact, one of the things that I could have highlighted in the supervisor section is that there are multiple declarations we expect the provisional to make. And I'll just go to it myself. I know I'm not sharing the screen any longer, but just to tell you what kind of declarations they're making is, I declare that my supervisor is competent in the area. So you've checked, can you supervise me for this? Yeah, they have to say, yeah, I am, or I'm not. You know, that's our standard of practice. You have to only work or supervise in areas you personally have competence in. I declare my supervisors reviewed and is in agreement with the contents of my plan. This means you've shared it with them. You're declaring that for every supervisor. So if you can't say that, no go. If you can't declare that, we won't accept it. So yes, the expectation is you must talk to your supervisor and have them say, yep, that's good. You submit that, I'm good with it, and find a way to share it with them however you can.
The next question is actually a follow-up to that is, will the supervisors get notification and be able to see the supervision plan?
No, not directly. And so I don't believe we're automatically sending a copy to the supervisor. However, once they're listed in there, and you know, the automated triggers are for evaluations only. So if you wanted to find a way to share what's submitted, and one, you know, that's a different question. I'm not exactly 100% sure, other than, you know, doing print screen. The only time it becomes a PDF for you is once it's done. When you've evaluated it and it's done, and we approve that evaluation and we say it's done, we click approved, and now becomes a PDF version that's easy to print and at any time, and it stays in your profile for, I guess, forever. And so that at that point it's easy. But if you wanted to like print it easily or share it easily with your supervisor, I'm not sure if there's a way to do that quickly and easily within the system currently. So the answer is no, we don't automatically notify them. We actually would need your consent to do that anyway, typically, but you know, it's a good question and something we could consider for an you know, amendment to the way it works going forward, because there's a lot of ability in the system to customize. It takes time and effort and sometimes money to do so, so we have to do that judiciously. But that's something we might take under advisement. If it's something that everyone says it's desired, we can certainly consider how to do that.
Okay, so we have a few minutes left for a couple of more questions. And what we'll try and do is keep these questions up so that if we have time at the end of the next presentation, we can add some more supervision questions. One of the questions here, it starts off with, the portal is awesome. It helps to streamline the process, and I have bi-directional communication. I have a question. Once the supervision plan has been approved, if we believe we have previously completed the hours, do we upload an application for a substantial equivalency process in the request for credit section, or do we submit it to CAP by regular mail? I'm not sure if there's a specific place online in the system to say that that's been completed.
Yeah, so make sure
It's
do we upload an application for substantial equivalency process? I'm not sure I'm understanding the question fully, Richard. To just
let me just answer. I think I've got that question, and if I don't answer the question, the person can shoot me a quick email afterwards, and I will provide a more fulsome answer. Once the supervision plan is completed, then you submit the plan. It is outside the substantial equivalency process, and the request for credit is a different process. So that's for that question. Let me just see if I have time for one more short question. Thank you for all the helpful information. The person writes, questions from a current provisioner who has completed hours and the oral but still has the EPPP. There is a potential that I might need to have my provisional status extended just to finish the last piece. However, my understanding is that CAP no longer offers extensions. So would it be reapplying as a provisional and filling out the credit request for hours, or are there other pieces? Well, I can answer this question for you, Dr. Janzen.
Sure.
They will have to reapply. Extensions are simply no longer granted because the legislation does not allow us to grant extensions. You will have to reapply, and hopefully the supervision that you're requesting for credit occurs within the last 5-year period, because supervision hours do become stale dated, and you may have to require some, but it is a separate process. One last question. My supervision plan was uploaded as a PDF. My original plan listed the end of November as an end date. I opened the PDF, but there is no way to change the dates, of course. How do I go about amending the plan?
Yeah, so if your plan is still alive, in other words, you're not done yet, and the end date is as a future date, it should have been imported or inputted already for you, and it should show up as it did when Mary Ainsworth came, sample I gave in the demo as, you know, supervised evaluated practice, and then with an update button beside it. That's how you get to that plan and how you make changes. If you don't see that there, there's a number of possibilities, and we don't know your individual circumstance as to why, if you're not seeing that there. You know, the plans went live yesterday only. So it's possible that if you haven't looked since yesterday that you wouldn't have seen it yet, because we did not make them visible till we were done the inputting process. There are just a select few left to do possibly, so you might be in that boat, but it's possible you just need to log into the system now so that now it should be visible to you, and then you can make the changes right there, and the anticipated end date can be changed without us being notified. You just change the end date and click save for later, and then when that new end date happens, that's when the evaluation happens. So that's how you're going to do that.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Dr. Janzen. We will have to pause on the supervision piece for now, but I'm hoping that you will stick around, and at the end, if we have more questions related to supervision plans, we can attempt to address a few more of those. And just to reinforce that CAP is finalizing several resources for members on this, which will appear on our website. This presentation will be recorded and also uploaded to the website, and that's in keeping with our usual policy of having as much information on the website as possible, so you can access that information easily when the time is convenient for you. And we ask that when you have questions about the supervision plans, please check the website first for the answer prior to contacting the college. And if the information isn't there, you can call us directly or send us an email, and we will keep track of those in addition to responding to your question and enhance our website resources. So thank you once again, Dr. Janzen. For the second half of our presentation, I would like to welcome all of those who are joining us for the second part on continuing competence, who may not have been with us at the beginning of this presentation in relation to supervision plans. As many of you know, the college's CCP has long been delayed because of a lack of regulatory approval. Given this delay, CAP sought a legal opinion, and a decision was made to develop a standard of practice. More recently, Alberta Health has adopted this strategy to address the same problem for several other regulated health professions. This may result in further changes, as recent legislation is currently being rolled out over the course of 2022 that may require an additional consultation process with members. Notwithstanding, CAP is of the view that we have the regulatory framework in place to move forward, and any future changes will be done in a staged and transparent fashion. It is, however, believed that our current program parameters will stand the test of time. Given this understanding, I would like to introduce Dr. Dina Martin. Dr. Martin currently serves as CAP's Assistant Deputy Registrar and Director of Professional Guidance. Dr. Martin's career has focused on competency development of those in many different helping professions. Her teaching portfolio includes undergraduate and graduate teaching in the areas of professional ethics and the law, counseling, leadership, research methods, and statistics. Over to you, Dr. Martin.
Thank you, and welcome everybody, especially for those of you that are staying on. Good golly, please take a moment and get up and stretch and do what you need to do to take care of yourself. Thank you kindly to Dr. Janzen and Dr. Spellisy. That was incredibly informative. I was trying to answer some of the responses in the Q&A, and yeah, I just really felt the energy and the excitement about what's coming our way. So I'm going to start with sharing my screen. As an academic formerly, I've gone with a little bit more traditional route. And so here we go. Oh, that's not going to work. Pardon me. Just there we go. This is the one we're looking for. So here we are. For those of you who've had a chance to look already, the web page is up and our information is available to you. We did start with the land acknowledgement earlier in the session, so we'll move through this, but just really welcoming and respecting that so many of you are joining us through this virtual format from all over Alberta. And so I'm really trusting that all of the different land regions are here today. So our 4 goals is down to 3, because you know how technology always has a few surprises for us. I was hoping we'll spend our time, 1, introducing the program. We've got a video, and we've got some time to spend a little bit deeper in 2 or 3 of the slides. I want to talk a little bit up today about the resources available to you folks. A lot of care and attention has gone into that. We won't be demonstrating the CCP online. The CCP online will be available February 1st. And like Troy kind of did his videos, those videos will be up and ready for you. And we may do a live demo sometime closer towards January. And then hopefully we'll have some time for question and answer. So here we go. I think Dr. Janzen did a fantastic job of talking about some of the external reasons why we're here. There's 2 reasons, you know, as we do sometimes with our clients, why here, why now? As Richard said, the external legislative changes are a big influence in rolling out the CCP at this time. And internally, if you haven't been paying attention, well, here's a chance to really celebrate. We've got new branding, we've got new web page, we've got the new MMS. Dr. Spelsky's been really instrumental in trying to move the college along and welcoming new technologies. So we feel we've got the right tools and we've got the right support from legislation. So let's roll this out. So Kira, I'm going to ask you to step in here and play the video.
Welcome to the College of Alberta Psychologists Continuing Competence Program. For the remainder of this presentation, we will refer to the College of Alberta Psychologists as CAP and to the Continuing Competence Program as CCP. We developed this video to provide helpful information about the role and design of the CCP so that our regulated members are aware of the annual requirements for the profession. The information contained in this video is from the CAP CCP Member Guide. Note that this program guide, along with additional resources such as FAQs and technical how-tos, can be found on the Continuing Competence page on the CAP website located at www.cap.ab.ca. CAP's CCP is designed to meet Section 50 of the Health Professions Act regarding continuing competence for all regulated health professions in Alberta. The program contributes to public protection by helping ensure the public receives safe, ethical, and competent professional services from our regulated members. The CCP also elevates the profession's reputation by promoting the pursuit of excellence in professional practice. When designing the program, efforts were made to ensure the program was both practical and flexible for all, meaning for our members, our administrative staff, and also for those who will participate in the professional review process. This program formalizes and complements the profession's commitment to continuous learning and ultimately public protection and the delivery of safe and ethical psychological service. CAP defines competence as a multidimensional construct that is generally considered to be comprised of the following components: knowledge, skill, judgment, and diligence. In regard to knowledge, psychologists are to maintain and ensure the accuracy and currency of the scientific theories and evidence relevant to their practice. Moving to the concept of skill, psychologists monitor their ability to effectively apply scientific theories and methods in their practice. Judgment is defined as psychologists applying their knowledge, skills, and experience in a way that is also informed by professional standards, laws, and ethical principles. Lastly, diligence means that psychologists carefully and persistently attend to their knowledge, skills, and judgment as applied in professional activities, being careful to prioritize the client's needs. This color diagram depicts CAP's CCP 4 core continuing competence areas. In total, members will complete a minimum of 24 required hours and participate in 3 wellness activities. Let's break this down further. Starting at the top right corner of the diagram, Members are to complete a minimum of 8 hours in scientifically supported professional practice. The focus of this area is to ensure members acquire and maintain their theoretical and scientific knowledge base appropriate for their professional activities. Please refer to the CAP CCP member guide for examples of activities that fit in this area. Next, members are to complete a minimum of 8 hours in the activities related to furthering their knowledge and application of ethics and jurisprudence. The focus of this area is to ensure psychologists acquire and maintain their knowledge of the professional code of ethics, standards of practice, practice guidelines and alerts, case law, and legislation relevant to their practice. In the area titled Professional Engagement, members are to complete a minimum of 8 hours connecting with other psychologists on a routine basis to foster and instill a commitment to both the profession and the practice of psychology. This may involve being a member of a professional association, volunteering with the regulatory body, and many other activities. Again, please see the CAP CCP member guide for examples. The remaining quadrant addresses wellness. The intention of this area is to ensure psychologists actively engage in activities that promote professional well-being. For this area, members will identify and participate in 3 wellness activities as part of their continuing competence program. In summary, members are to complete a minimum of 24 required hours and participate in 3 wellness activities annually. There are 3 explicit steps to participating in CAP's CCP. Each step was developed to answer a question that would move a person logically through the CCP process. In step 1, members describe their practice and fill in fields related to the branch of psychology, professional activities, practice context, and client focus. In step 2, members write personalized SMART objectives across the 4 core categories of continuing competence. And finally, in step 3, members record and evaluate their CCP activities. Members are encouraged to keep their practice profile, goals, and CCP activity records up to date throughout the year. They are also encouraged to plan their CCP activities in advance of each practice permit renewal cycle. Administratively, the CCP directly aligns with the practice permit year, starting April 1st and finishing March 31st. At their first practice permit renewal, members must complete steps 1 and 2 prior to receiving their practice permit. For all subsequent practice permit renewal years, members must complete steps 1, 2, and 3. All regulated members are required to participate in CAP's CCP. This applies to fully registered psychologists, registered provisional psychologists, members on parental leave, and members who may hold multiple registrations and/or are registered in another jurisdiction. CCP audits are conducted annually to confirm member engagement and may consist of a computer, administrative, and/or professional review of the member profile. Each year, psychologists will be required to submit a declaration of program participation as part of their annual practice permit renewal. A percentage of these CCP profiles will be selected for review as a result of random selection, a late or incomplete submission, or a request from the complaints director. As part of the audit, a psychologist may be asked for clarification, supporting documents, and/or enhancements or revisions to their CCP profile. When the audit is complete, psychologists will be notified and receive feedback on their continuing competence profiles, including further instructions if required. Thank you for watching this presentation on the College of Alberta Psychologists Continuing. If you have questions, please refer to the CAP website for additional information and resources.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Dina.
You bet. So there we are. Were people able to hear that? I saw in the chat that maybe people weren't.
One person didn't have audio, but
Okay.
it was working fine from this end.
Excellent.
And,
Perfect. Okay.
And I just wanted to highlight that it wasn't due to the lack of diligence on both Troy or Dina's part regarding the ability to demonstrate the profile. What had happened was late last night, our our technical people were updating the test site and wiped the test site. So unfortunately, we found out this morning, and I love the diligence of both Dr. Janzen and Dr. Martin, who went to their computers bright and early this morning to look at that test site to get there, to ensure everything was in place. And lo and behold, that ability to do that. But we can anticipate that in the presentations that are to come on December 7th and January 20th, we'll be able to demonstrate both the CCP program as well as further demonstrate the supervision plans portion of the system. So there are a few questions.
I've got more to go here. Richard, did you want me to keep going, or do you want to take questions now?
Let's let you keep going.
Okay, sure. And thank you for sharing that, Richard. Yeah, the program was wiped, and that's okay. I'm going to take it as we've got the bare bones there. We know what we've got. We've got the tech guide built, so we can recreate a lot of what we've already decided. But this is a great time. After you're hearing what you've heard today, if you've got questions or insight, we still have a chance to tweak that final version. So truly reach out, use that webpage, request feedback or a comment, because I will be watching and rebuilding as we go. So this slide here, I just wanted to leave it up because I know the video goes quite quickly. I tried to get the video under 5 minutes. I think we hit the 7-minute mark. Just recognizing that we're busy folks and our attention spans aren't as long as we would like them to be. But here it is in the top, in the right side of your screen there. This is our model. We're looking for 24 hours of 24 hours total in activities under scientifically supported professional practice, ethics and jurisprudence informed practice, and professional engagement. Okay, so I just wanted to reiterate that. I do have some examples coming up. So just to bring forward those 3 steps again, they're really straightforward. It was intended to move people through the system. What am I doing right now? What skills and knowledge would I like to explore further? And then at the end, did I accomplish what I accomplished? So on your screen here, what you can see is 4 sample goals. I actually can't see it because my controls are in the place, so please forgive me. The first one being, I will learn new techniques on supporting children in trauma by attending a 2-day conference on trauma, by January 30th, 2023. So an example of a SMART goal, SMART being specific, measurable, right? All of those things. So this goal would fit nicely in scientifically supported professional practice. 6-hour days, 2 days, so 12 hours there. So that would meet your 8 hours. And then in the webpage, you would, in the actual submission of the activity, you would indicate that you took professional training and it was a conference, right? Another example under ethics and jurisprudence informed practice, I will read and discuss the CAP standards of practice and practice guidelines with my peer consultation group. So I know there's many of you out there that meet in peer consultation groups throughout the year. And I know that you do review our standards of practice and practice guidelines. You've reached out from time to time and provided feedback. So this is a way that you could capture the work that you're doing. So 6 hours, like I said, meeting every second month under professional leadership and engagement, peer consultation and group. And I'll get into some of these a little bit more in a second here. Under professional engagement, an example of that will be, I will contribute to regulatory accountability by serving on the CAP Practice Advisory Committee. So that's a great example of professional engagement. You'd estimate maybe spend 10 hours a year doing that. And again, it would fall under professional leadership and engagement under CAP volunteer. And then the last one, as an example, I'll maintain my physical health by attending a weekly 90-minute Pilates class throughout the year. And that would fall under wellness participation, wellness, and it would be a physical goal. So if you're following along with me, you're going, okay, there's a lot more information there. So let's see if I can move my next slide. So what are the CCP activities? So CCP activities are academic coursework. These are the major headings, and then there's subheadings within these. All of this can be found on the webpage. I'll take you there in a moment. But we've got academic coursework. We've got professional training. So those of you that are doing, training like through MDR or through Pearson or something like that could count it that way. We recognize self-directed study. You may do self-directed study individually or in a group. And that's you setting up a reading list, doing, setting up a reading list, perhaps watching podcasts, those sorts of things. Research and scholarship we want to recognize. Professional leadership and engagement. This one's one of our heavier ones. This includes professional memberships. So if you're a member of PAA and you're regularly reading their symposium and an active member, you can count that, or an active member of CPA or APA. It also counts volunteerism. So if you're volunteering at CAP again, volunteering PAA, APA, CAP, we've got all those words out there, that would work as well. This also involves peer consultation, professional leadership engagement, and it also includes supervision and mentorship and volunteering. Perhaps you're sitting on a board and supporting folks, okay? Under wellness and healthy lifestyle, the subheadings we have under there: physical, spiritual, work life, creative pursuits, cultural engagement. So recognizing that taking care of ourselves, self-care, ethical imperative, especially in COVID times, we really, the demands on all of us as a society and as professionals is great. So it was really important to us that we create that space, as per our code of ethics, as per our personal practices, to recognize that wellness is important. And then, because this is new, because there's opportunity for growth, because I don't know if I have captured everything, I left an other category. In my mind, in other things might fit under there. Media contributions could possibly fit under there, or they may fit somewhere else. But, and I also thought maybe if you were doing some practice outcome monitoring, that might be also another type of, that might go under research and scholarship, but it might be more program evaluation. So we did leave an other category there, recognizing that there's room to grow. It's a first go at this program, so we will learn together. Okay, this is the new web page. So many thanks to those who've worked diligently on this. Kathy, I'm looking at you. It was launched, I think, late last night. So if you haven't been there, please make sure you take the time to get there. There's a lot of really helpful information. I want to say to folks, and we're going to come back around to this, I've got some tips and tricks, but I want to say that please know that it depends on what type of browser that you're using. So at work, at CAP, I'm a PC user. And so I created this screen capture using Google Chrome. And when I'm at home on my Mac, it doesn't look like this, right? When I'm using Safari or Firefox, both of those. Instead, I need to go to the top hand, left hand. So if you're not using Google Chrome, not a big deal, but just know that this information is there. You just might need to look for it a little bit. In terms of what is on the CPC webpage content, we have worked really hard to make sure that you have all the information, resources, and tools that you need to go forward. So you've got a program manual. That video we just watched is from the program manual. The program manual is about 25 pages long, and we have tried to cover all the content that we think you need to know right now. There is more information that's going to come, the information around auditing and that sort of thing, but that is probably a good year down the road. So please refer to the program manual. It has everything that you need to know right here, right now. I've also created an FAQs because I realized you might have a specific question, and to see if I could anticipate what those questions were and answer those. So I think that I've got a copy here. I think that's also about 6 or 7 pages. So take the time to refer to that. We also included on the webpage sample goals and activities. So those are, I called them one pages, but our designer wasn't able to get them on one page. But they're from the appendices, and they're meant to be cheat sheets. So when I showed you those sample goals, along with the activities that might go under them and that sort of thing, you'll find those right now on the website for you to access. So there's sample goals there. There's also a list of all the activities with those headings I described, and then with more subheading descriptors. And last but not least, if you haven't had the chance to read the CAP monitor yet, great work to Lindsay and the gang. That came out on just recently, I want to say a week or two ago, that monitor is also dedicated to continuing competence. And we have some phenomenal contributors. Dr. Jocelyn Lockyer wrote on that. Another colleague from another college wrote. Richard also solicited some folks. So it was great, helpful information there about CAP CCP and continuing competence in general. On our webpage, you'll also find an implementation survey. So if you don't mind, feel free to navigate over there up through the end of the session if you're not there already, and fill out the survey and let us know what you need more information on, what would be helpful, what might be missing. I will be reading all of it and using it to help inform my rebuild of the CCP. There's also, there's the question feedback submission box as well. The implementation survey is only going to be up there for 1 year. This really is how we implement the CCP. There will be an annual program evaluation of the CCP that you will complete at each practice permit renewal year. So this feedback really is specific to helping us make sure that you're able to participate well, and or things you'd like us to consider as we continue to monitor it. Resources that are in development for February, we have a how-to tech guide. It hasn't been made pretty yet by our fantastic contractor, but we do have that built, and we're looking at building resources for writing SMART objectives. So I think those are the two left on my to-do list. And of course, we'll have a video of how to navigate the CCP as well. This image is taken directly from the web page. Again, way to go, Kathy. And it shows the actual dates. This is the only place. CAP is trying to do some evergreening in our product material, like in the documents that we're creating, so that they have a long shelf life. So anything that's time sensitive will be put onto the CAP webpage. So this here is where you can go find your dates. So for those of you that got your calendars for January 2022, I don't yet, which is unusual. Mark February 1st, that is when access to the CCP login opens. And so you have February and March to develop your CCP, and you need to complete your CCP steps 1 and 2 before you move on to the practice permit year. Okay, so listen with your big ears here. So access opens February 1st to steps 1 and 2. Step 3 opens April 1st, and step 3 is where you add your activities and evaluate them. So you can't add your activities before April 1st, simply because we don't start counting them until April 1st. So there is a bit of timeliness to when things are opening and closing. So I'm just going to say it one more time. In February 1st is when CCP opens for steps 1 and 2, and then it closes. Step 3, where you add things, will go from April 1st, and we wrote here January 31st, but you'll be able to add to your current plan for the 2023 year all the way through until the end of March. But there's an overlap. So in February and March of 2023, sorry, that should say 2024 there, perhaps. No, it's right, 2023 to 2023. That's when you'll be wrapping up step 3 of the existing year and then planning forward for steps 1 and 2 for the upcoming practice permit year. So a lot of moving parts here. This chart was designed to help you make sense of those dates. So I'm just going to try and say it one more time, just because I think repetition sometimes is helpful, especially when we're learning new things, is come February 1st, access is going to open to your learning through my CAP login. Okay, and then you'll have February and March to develop your plan, but it must be done before you do the rest of the practice permit requirements. Okay, and then if you develop your CCP plan, if you're a keener like me and February 3rd, you want to pay for the upcoming year and re-register, you can do that, but you're going to need your plan done first. So February 1st, everything opens. April, everything opens for steps 1 and 2. April 1st is when you can upload everything. And then when we come around to February of the next year, that's where we're going to be juggling, we're going to be planning forward and finishing up our current year. So hopefully I did okay there and that makes sense. This slide was where we're going to do the fancy demo, but as Richard said, there's been a little bit of a glitch. So we'll bypass that. And I really wanted to make sure it's worth your time to come today. So I thought I better throw in a tips and tricks handout. And so here we are, tips and tricks. Recognize this the best you can as new learning, right? And we're all going to be beginners at this. Right now, I'm the only one that's been in and out of there 1,000 times. So this is new learning, and new learning means that we need to create the time and space for it, right? How you do that is going to be depending on your learning style. There's no right way to do your CCP. If you're a go-getter, jump in there, play, and then go read. No big deal. If you're a little bit more conservative and orderly and methodological, go ahead, read all the CAP resources, and then enter the system. Follow what's best for your learning, but recognize you're going to need to set aside some time to work this through. Now, we're hoping it's not going to be more than an hour, but you know, your learning style, your comfort with technology, your awareness of your goals, all of that's going to determine how long it takes you to get through this. Okay. Next point there, connect with colleagues, learn together. You may be fantastic at technology, and the person sitting in the office next to you may know about all the professional development events happening around Alberta and Canada and maybe even the US, but technology is not their friend. So when possible, find colleagues to work together through the CCP. Again, we're in it together, right? Learn together. Please don't rely on the college to be able to walk you through all of these steps. We really invite you to connect with colleagues and see if you can figure some of these out with the resources. We worked really hard to develop those. There we go, make use of the resources available. And for those of you who do a lot of design work and development, you know, sometimes it's just way easier if you do your thinking first and then do your writing. And so if you can think through your CCP plan or your goals and then put them on paper, that's going to save you a whole bunch of time. The technology that we have isn't meant to help you develop your CCP. It's like a system to enter it. So I don't want you to have high expectations that you're going to figure things out, while you're in the program. And I'm going to just say, here's why. We're going to move on to the technology. You get 20 minutes per login. So if you've done all your thinking beforehand and you've got your documents on paper and all you need to do is cut and copy, you'll be laughing and golden. But if you're trying to come up with your goals in the plan, you've only got 20 minutes and you'll get logged out. And so something to be aware of. These are some of the limitations of the technology that we're using. The next point that's kind of above that, when in the CCP, you know, stay in the CCP. So if it's your first time entering into the online portal, the MyCap login, then go play, touch, look everywhere. But when you are in the CCP, if you jump out of the CCP, you're going to lose what you were doing, right? When in CCP, stay in CCP. Don't become distracted by the other buttons or get curious what's over there. If you do want to do that, then you need to say, save my progress. But the system isn't able to maintain your progress if you jump around, okay? Use Chrome as your browser. I think we talked about that a little bit already. Part of this is because the Alinity system, the software system that we're using, has been designed and tested for the Google Chrome browser. So can you use those other browsers? Absolutely. Do you think it'll be working fine? In some ways it will, but what I've been told and what I've noticed with my own beta testing is that you don't have access to some of the features. So if you use Google Chrome, you should have access to everything the program does. But if you start using Safari or Microsoft Edge or some of those other browsers, it can get a little bit dicey. Okay, last thing for technology tips and tricks. And I don't believe there's anybody out here who would ever leave their CCP to the last minute, but be cognizant of scheduled maintenance. It is a very robust program. They do maintenance. They have schedules of maintenance. You get a little indicator on your dashboard. So if you think, oh, I'm going to sit down on Sunday and go through this, log in to make sure there's not a planned update. for Sunday. Okay, we hope that's not going to interfere with your experience. I'm in relationship with a lot of other colleges who use this software. They don't report it as a major issue, but it does surface for some users. So we just want to pass this information on to you so that no one is inconvenienced. Okay, last slide here. Without a doubt, folks, it takes a team. I'm just so appreciative for the CAP board members and all their support with the CCP process. As we've developed the program, it's been 2 years in the making to get it to this point. So their support and patience and feedback has been fantastic. Again, the practice advisory, we did a little taste test with them and they gave feedback, as well as former CAP board members also got a sneak peek and helped identify some of those challenges that we were talking about with browsers and functionality. Colleagues from other colleges have accessed our CCP, and we're really quite excited about what we had developed. Not to toot my own horn or anything, but we were so lucky to start from scratch in a way. And so we really feel that we were able to build something pretty strong, as opposed to having to tweak an existing program. So this really was, a great opportunity to start from scratch. And then, of course, to the CAP staff, Dr. Spellices and Dr. Janzen, and phenomenal feedback. Lindsay and Kathy, for those of you who haven't had a chance to meet these folks, they are just A1 at their jobs and keeping the technology and making things look great. And Charmaine Thompson also helped out a lot in terms of testing. So I'll stop for there. And I can see that there's Q&A, 24 questions. So I think we're ready for questions and answers.
All right, thank you very much, Dina. I just wanted to go to the Q&A, and one of the first comments was about, is this program a fait accompli, or is there an opportunity to have feedback? And we've built feedback. I just wanted to say that we've built feedback in the entire process. And when you actually do the program, there will be feedback as you participate in the program. But I did want to say that overall, as an organization, and Dina can speak to feedback as well, but overall as an organization, we are a continuous learning organization. We accept feedback daily. And that we consider all feedback. We may not accept it, but we consider all feedback and give it an attentive look. So we're open to feedback, and there's many ways to send it to CAP, as well as through the Continuous Competence Program. There was another question, Dina, if you'd like. Will we accept CE events from other jurisdictions, such as BC or American Psychological Association?
Great question. Absolutely. Have a look. I believe that's addressed in our FAQ, as well as in the program guide. CAP is really generous, and we will, I'm going to use the term double dipping. If you want to attend a conference and use those hours towards the learning that you did for in another jurisdiction and or for another professional designation, we will recognize those hours. But we would say to people, make sure that the other regulatory body, whether it's in Alberta, but a different healthcare profession, or whether it's psychology in another jurisdiction, make sure that they'll recognize transferring or using credits in both programs. Great question.
There was a second question just about the design of the program and SMART goals and objectives. I could possibly address this one in a generic fashion, is that we have looked at the continuous competence literature for the past 50 years. We've also looked at the seminal work, Austin Zubin's work from the University of Toronto, Greg Niemeyer's work, for the American Psychological Association, in particular the Practice Directorate. So we have scoured the literature on continuous competence programs, and what we've tried to do is take the best of those worlds and to put it into a flexible program that is easy to understand and easy to implement. And we've also looked at the research in what leads individuals to coming into contact to the college through the professional misconduct stream. And we believe that we've integrated those pieces into our 4 quadrants in a flexible, logical fashion that has some basis in the scientific literature. So then I'll let Dina go to the next question. Would activities such as this be included in professional engagement? And I believe they were talking about the podcasts, I'm not sure, or this event. Yes, I think this event would be, as well as CAP's Professional Development Day, would be considered professional engagement. The next question I'll give to you, Dina. Oh, this will be good. Does volunteering with PAA count, such as a practice advisor, ethics roundtable facilitator?
You bet it does. You bet it does. And I'm kind of trying to glance to my right here. Richard, I'm trying to do 2 things here at once here. Also, people raised the question about, are we allowed to count hours? Like, let's say if you're doing EMDR supervision or that sort of thing. The answer is yes. So we conceptualize it as offering service in the capacity of a psychologist. So if you were volunteering on a board, so for example, I do some volunteer work as a librarian for a center, that wouldn't count because it wouldn't count as professional engagement as a psychologist. I would be able to count that under my wellness because it does well for me, but I wouldn't count that as professional engagement. Professional engagement, if I was volunteering, let's say, I'm just drawing a blank, at a nonprofit organization that supports people with disabilities, as a psychologist, representing the field of psychology, behavioral plans, and that sort of thing, then that would count as professional engagement. So that's a great question. I'll have a look through the materials, and if it's not clear enough, I'm more than happy to add an extra sentence or 2 to make that clear. I think, I think we did put in there the language is, if you're volunteering in the capacity as a psychologist, it would count as professional engagement. If you're doing it because it brings you joy, brings you wellness, we put it under the wellness category.
Correct, Dina. And I think that some people are going to say, are going to be weighing in their mind, where do I put this? On what quadrant do I put this? But to give Dina's example is I volunteer on a psychological assistance program for lawyers. And so I am the only psychologist on the board. So I could include that as my professional engagement volunteer as opposed to my wellness. Let's have a couple more questions, Dina. Do other provincial psychological jurisdictions count towards professional leadership and engagement?
I didn't catch the first part of that, Richard, sorry.
So do other provincial psychological jurisdictions count towards professional leadership and engagement? I think what they're saying in the sense of jurisdictions, other groups, other professional groups.
I believe so. Why not? Richard, I don't have a concern.
If they're psychological in nature.
Yeah. As a professional guidance response, my head is making sure that you're providing psychological services within Alberta. And if you are providing services outside of Alberta, being mindful of practicing outside of jurisdictional requirements, but belonging to an association outside of Alberta, go for it.
Okay. Does CAP have a process outline for those who may want to develop CCP activities?
Okay.
Learning opportunities, giving workshops, etc.
Okay, so I think, Richard, I'll let you handle this one because I think if you're looking at developing a workshop or something that could be used for CCP, we're looking at, that would be through the PAA, looking at possibly having them host it or another association. CAP is not going to be hosting any CCP workshops or trainings. Am I reading that question right, Richard, or do you have a different?
Yes, except for the regulatory part where we have regulatory events, which you could also include your participation in, such as our Professional Development Day. We see that as more, the education as being more under the purview of PAA. Certainly, we would encourage our members to contact the PAA to possibly work to collaborate with them to offer their workshop and their opportunities. Do we see more opportunities for continuing competence, people who want to offer those offerings? Yes, we do, because now the program is a requirement. It's a program requirement, CCP. What that means is that, like having insurance, which is a government requirement, to all our members must have a professional liability insurance, the government has also indicated to us that all members must participate in CCP. We think our program is broad enough that members will be able to meet these reasonable expectations, regardless of their circumstances, through varying different means. And of course, we always take into consideration an individual's context.
Perfect, thank you.
So I have
some answers here as well.
Okay, I see another question.
Go for it,
go ahead.
Please.
Members will need to complete 24 hours prior to being able to obtain their practice permit. Yes, what will happen is you will make a declaration that you have completed your program, your CCP hours, and you will need to make a plan for the upcoming year, or that will prevent you from being registered.
So I don't, Richard, and help me if I'm wrong, or maybe even Lindsay can jump in here too. We haven't tested out that piece. Our hope is that it is seamless. So we see people, I've anticipated that people might enter their CCP program through two ways. I strongly encourage you to go enter the CCP program independently on your own, play around, and do your steps 1 and 2, so that when you go to register, it will already have been uploaded to the system. But that doesn't work for everybody. So if you're going to not do your CCP until you decide to register, plan for extra time, you'll enter the registration process, you'll have to complete steps 1 and 2, sign the declarations, and move on. I do not believe, we are not anticipating that there's going to be a time delay. We are anticipating that people might do it independently and then they're linked, or that they may do it as part of the process. So there isn't an expectation that you have to do the CCP before you register. But on our end, we're going to strongly encourage it, because we don't want people to get frustrated at the back end if something goes wrong and then they find that they can't register on time.
There was another question, Dina, about can you start your total plan in April 2022? And perhaps you'd like to answer this, Dina, but it's tied to renewal, but I'll let you go ahead.
So steps 1 and 2 need to be done prior to practice permit renewal. So you will need to do, so there's 3 steps, but the 3 steps are staggered over from February until April of the following year. So you cannot start your program. You start step 3 starting April 1st.
Okay, would doing pro bono counseling work and or producing psychological focused social media content be considered part of CCP?
Great question. I don't think doing pro bono work by itself would meet the CCP expectation. I think you would need to put it more in context, right? If you're offering services as part of professional engagement and working in an organization, and that it's in, you know, that it meets under professional engagement or professional leadership, then I think that would count. But it wouldn't fall under, I don't know if, my sense just off the top of my head right now is that I wouldn't be okay with putting it under jurisprudence and ethics. It wouldn't fit under psychological, scientifically informed professional practice. So you kind of left with wellness and professional engagement. So I don't know, Richard, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, I would see that as likely following in engagement activities, producing social media with psychological content. I would see that as engagement. Yeah. And so I see definitely that would be a place to fit. Now, I think that the college is going to be very gracious and broad-minded when people are putting things in a certain area. I think we're not going to be looking at telling people, well, you made a mistake and put it in the wrong area. We might be doing some coaching and those kinds of things, but certainly what our commitment is to especially their first year, a very accommodating year, a very collaborative year where we're allowing people to adapt to the new program, to answer questions, to seek clarification, and we will certainly be doing that. I do have a couple of more questions. Go ahead, Dina.
Sure. I see one here from David that I wanted to address, and I apologize. I'm jumping all over, so I don't mean to miss anybody, but I'm not systematic in any way. David raised the point of COVID and what's its impact. And if we can start moving activities from year to year to year. And so I can tell you, what the colleagues have done in other regulated health professions. They've taken different approaches. So some colleges have expanded the time period with which people can complete their activities. Some people have eliminated the audit process for this particular year. So different colleges have responded to different ways in recognizing that the demands, accessibility, those sorts of things are very different this year. But on my end, and I think Troy did a great job, or Dr. Janzen did a good job talking about this a little bit earlier, we do have system limitations. And so one of the system limitations is by date. And so we are not, at this point, we're not wanting to have people plug and play, moving, learning from last year, carrying it forward or planning forward so they can use it back. That won't work for our goal of having the programs to be audited by computer first, right? But as Richard said, we are definitely going to pay attention. We're going to watch. We're going to see what our colleagues are doing. We're going to learn our own way. But for right now, and I don't think this is documented quite clearly in the FAQs, it's one of the areas I wanted to add, is that we are wanting activities to be within the practice permit year. But yeah, we will need to adapt to COVID if we get hit with something like that again, in terms of impact and access to professional development. Anything to add there, Richard?
No, that's, I think you covered it, Dina. And again, because of these requirements, such as having insurance and continuing competence, are often not subject to those external variables that, such as COVID, they're a requirement that we continue to have. So again, we are certainly conscious of all the pressures that members are under, and we will take those into consideration. I have a couple of more questions, Dina.
Absolutely.
Does teaching psychology count in any area?
Great. This is a question, I think that's my dear colleague, Karine. This has gone around our discussion group. And the idea was that teaching psychology wouldn't count if it was your job, right? If that's what you do, it doesn't make sense to count that as continuing competence. But if you were asked to guest lecture, or if you were doing a presentation somewhere else that was above and beyond your regular duties, that would be considered continuing competence. So continuing competence really is that expectation that you take learning and you go above and beyond where you're currently at. Richard, I know we've talked about this,
Yes.
This has come around, so.
It does get complicated, Corinne, and it's a really great question. And Dina is correct. We kind of look at it like you would think about the concept of double dipping. If you're in your role as a professor, this is what you do. That's your professional activity. And then you compare it to a person who's in private practice and says, well, my professional activity is private practice. I should get recognition for those private practice as contributing to my continuing competence. We look at it as above and beyond that. So you would, if you were a private practice psychologist, but you were asked to present at a workshop on a specific type of issue where you spent hours and hours doing research and preparation, I think that would be appropriate. But again, our position is that it's about growth and it's about keeping current. And so again, one has to look at that, both the intent of the program, but also the spirit of it. I have a couple of more questions.
Okay, I want to jump in. Okay, go ahead. I just see some LEAP stuff coming up, and I just really want to be clear that the LEAP 2.0 is for those entering practice in the province of Alberta who have not taken a previous exam, either the LEAP 1.0 or the oral exam. So there's no need for anybody who's already fully registered or who has passed the LEAP 1.0 or the oral exam to worry about taking the LEAP 2.0. But here's a plug, if you're curious, anybody can register for the LEAP 2.0 and you can pay and take an exam and test your knowledge if you're up for the challenge. Okay, Richard, let's do this.
Okay, we have another question about what does audited by computer / digitally mean versus administrative or professional audits?
Fantastic, great question. So this is one of those areas where I think our program manual is going to grow. So please have a look at our program manual. It goes into a little bit more detail on what is the audit process. And the one-pager handouts have ideas about how you can plan ahead for the audit process. Computer or digital audit means that, like Dr. Janzen was talking about with the supervision plan, you're not going to be able to proceed if you don't have certain things entered in a certain way. So for example, if you don't have goals in all 4 areas, the computer will not let you proceed. That's a digital audit. When we come through to the end of the year and we're counting up all of your hours, if your hours don't match, that's the computer will stall you out. That's a digital audit. So we're trusting and programming our system so that the computer can help us audit. So that's the first level of audit. And then if you have a look there, I don't have my, let me see if I can pull this up here. There are a couple of reasons why somebody may be audited. The most likely reason will be because it's random selection. We're talking about auditing a percentage of profiles every year. So that would just be random selection. But if you're late, that might be a reason to, or incomplete submission, we might end up auditing that. And so with the audit will be, so the first level is the computer one. The second one will be administrative. We've got fantastic staff in registration. So if you're selected to be audited, they'll be performing the first review. We're going to work and train. We've got, you guys know, we got fantastic people in our registrations department who'll help us out. And they will forward and identify, again, CCP profiles that they've got questions about, right? They're not practitioners, they're administrative staff. So again, they'll be trained to look for, do the numbers add up? Is this within the scope of psychology? Do the dates and names, was there accuracy in what you said you did and the information that you uploaded? And then the third and possible audit that some, we're hoping it'll be less than 5% we'll go to, but we won't know until we're in gear. We'll go through to professional audit. And that means that it'll be raised up to the level of professional staff. So Dr. Janzen, Dr. Spellacy, myself may have a reason to review it. We may choose to send it to a continuing competency committee for review. So if we feel that it, if your entire work is as a counseling psychologist, but all of your CCP activity is in neuroscientific assessment, we might have some questions and we might say, can we talk about this a little bit more, right? So I haven't said it in this session, but I know our video said it. The CCP is really here to help support the mandate of public protection. And our goal is to make sure that, that the public is receiving, safe, competent, ethical practice. And we're not here to police and to tell you what to take. You're able to self-determine the direction of your learning, which I think is really important. And we are a peer-reviewed profession. You all wrote your masters and theses and dissertations. And so we're open to review from our colleagues from time to time. And this is one of those times where colleagues will, may have an opportunity to comment on our work in a formal way. Anything to add to that, Richard?
No. And I just wanted to, I know we're quickly coming to that. And Dina, if you're okay with it, I am just going to quickly respond to the last 3 questions. And you can jump in. We're just trying to get them. Well, there's even 4 now. And I'm going to ask anybody who did not feel they got a fulsome answer to their question to send us an email and we will respond. But I just wanted one person said, can you speak to scientifically informed aspect? And that is evidence-based. So we're going to use those as synonymous. One person thanked us for not being prescriptive in terms of CE credits. saying they appreciate that. And that's just a recognition that there are many good offerings that don't have a CE credit assigned to them that we feel are beneficial to the person, to the profession and the person's development. Another person said, asked about getting through their employment, getting learning opportunities. And yes, if you are taking an 8-hour professional development day on, let's say, on some assessment tools, you can count that towards your CCP. So we're saying in that case, if it's just strictly, if it's directly related, so if you're taking a testing course that's keeping you current, we would not have a problem with that. Now, there was a couple of other questions regarding just that kind of issue. So again, if you are in doubt, call us, send us an email first, but check the website, read the manual. Dina's done a great job on the manual. It's posted. There is a whole continuing competence web page. So there's lots of resources, and I'll turn it over to you for final comments, Dina.
No, Richard, sorry, I was just in there trying to cut and copy and respond to some of the questions there that I haven't had a chance to respond to. There's some questions about, use of SMART goals and this and that. We worked really hard to develop this. We did it on evidence. We did it on best practice in other professions, healthcare professions. ASPPB does fantastic work in publications on continuing competence. We've done our best. Are there many ways to approach continuing competence? I'm going to say hell yes. Like, just have a look around. We chose a program, if you have a look at the program guide, we built this on values. We wanted to be flexible and responsive. And, we just wanted to hit, we're regulators and, we adhere to that kind of right touch regulation. We didn't want it to be excessively onerous. And we didn't want it to, at the same time, we want it to be something that called people forward and invited them for their learning. I think one of the comments that I got, Richard, from one of our colleagues who did review this before it went out, the first words were, I do this already. And I'm like, yeah, I think the majority of our folks do. This isn't meant to be something new that's a burden or or demanding or in any way, burden is the right word. Like that's not the intent of this. It's to really celebrate and recognize what I think most psychologists are already doing, most if not all, and to capture it in a way that we thought was reasonable and responsible from a regulatory perspective. So anything else to add to that? I just invite you to use the comments. We will continue to refine, and all feedback is welcome. It gives us moments to pause and think and reflect. So thanks.
So what I would like to say finally is it is about professional engagement. It is about learning. We know that those who have more years in the profession, surprisingly, are at a greater risk for running into difficulties. And it's also about balance. When we included a quadrant for work for wellness, it is a recognition about taking care of yourself, about knowing that in order to give good service, you have to be in a good place. We have one more question someone would like me to answer prior to leaving, and it's about the requirement for participation while a person is on parental leave. We believe that we have a fairly robust parental leave program. For those of you who don't know, we do forgive all fees related to when a person's on parental leave for a 12-month period. While a person's on parental leave, however, because we're a regulatory body, we're subject to regulatory requirements, such as you cannot have a practice permit unless you have insurance. Also, too, continuing competence is a requirement for holding an active practice permit. So individuals who are on parental leave have active practice permits, despite the fact that their permit has been granted to them without the financial burden placed upon them of having to pay for a practice permit when they're on leave. So that's the reason for making this requirement for everyone. If a person is thinking, well, I'm going to retire next year, do I have to do continuing competence this year? Yes, you have an active practice permit. So we are trying to ensure that everyone in the profession recognizes that it is a privilege to be part of a profession, to hold a professional practice permit, but there are some requirements to having that permit. So that's the question. Anything else, Dina? Great. So thank you for joining us. And again, if individuals want to submit questions or have further discussions on any topics raised today, just feel free to contact the college and we can have further dialogue, or join us at the next town hall scheduled for December 7th. Thank you, Dina. Thank you, Troy.